For a long time, passive income felt like the final level of the money game. Not success, not wealth, but escape. The idea that you could build something once, step away, and let money quietly arrive every month while you lived your real life somewhere else. No alarms, no deadlines, no pressure. Just freedom funded by systems you set up in the past. I didn't come to that idea randomly. It was everywhere. Books, podcasts, videos, interviews, threads, and courses all repeated the same promise in slightly different words. Build assets, create streams, let money work while you sleep. If you were still actively working, the message implied you just had not figured it out yet. So I tried to figure it out. At first, it felt responsible. Passive income sounded safer than ambition, smarter than hustle, more mature than chasing the next big thing. I was thinking long term. I was building systems instead of trading hours. But somewhere along the way, something felt off. Not dramatically wrong, not obviously broken, just quietly disappointing. The money showed up, but the feeling I expected never did. That was the moment I started questioning the idea itself, not the execution. Because when something keeps failing to deliver emotionally, even when it technically works, it is usually the framing that is broken. The first crack appeared when I realized how much work still existed behind anything labeled passive. Even the cleanest income streams demanded attention. Dividends required monitoring. Rental income required decisions, repairs, taxes, and stress. Businesses that ran without me still needed oversight, talent, culture, and occasional intervention. Nothing collapsed without me, but nothing truly lived without me either. Passive did not mean effortless. It meant delayed effort, hidden effort, or effort someone else was doing on my behalf. And that distinction matters more than people admit. I noticed that the more I chased passive income, the more allergic I became to visible work. I started treating effort like a flaw instead of a tool. If something required my attention, I assumed I was doing it wrong. If I had to be involved, I thought the system was broken. That mindset slowly made me disengaged from the very things that created value in the first place. The second crack was psychological. Passive income was supposed to feel liberating. Instead, it made time heavier. When your calendar empties before your sense of purpose does, the silence gets loud. You stop measuring progress by effort and start measuring it by balance sheets alone. Money came in, but meaning did not. I expected relief. What I got was restlessness. The truth is that most people do not want income without effort. They want income without anxiety. They want predictability. They want dignity. They want to stop feeling trapped by bills and obligations. Passive income becomes a symbol for those desires, even though it rarely satisfies them directly. Once I separated those ideas, everything became clearer. Passive income is not misleading because it does not exist. It is misleading because it is sold as an emotional solution to a structural problem. It promises peace when what most people need is alignment. Another realization hit when I looked closely at how passive income scales. The math is rarely honest in the early conversations. A small yield on a small base changes nothing. A meaningful yield requires a meaningful base. And building that base almost always requires aggressive, active effort first. The irony is that the phase of life where passive income is most useful usually comes after the phase where active income mattered most. But the marketing reverses that order, making people chase the outcome before they have earned the engine. I spent years optimizing for passivity instead of leverage. I wanted income that needed less of me, rather than income that multiplied my best efforts. That subtle shift changed how I made decisions. I avoided projects that required engagement, even when they had long-term upside. because they did not fit the passive narrative. I confused low involvement with high intelligence. What finally broke the illusion was watching people who had achieved what I was aiming for. Not the influencers, but the quiet ones who actually lived inside systems that no longer needed them daily. Many were financially comfortable. Some were extremely wealthy. But very few looked fulfilled by their lack of involvement. They were not relaxed. They were understimulated. Humans are not designed to be spectators of their own lives. Removing struggle without replacing it with purpose creates emptiness, not freedom. Passive income did not fail them financially. It failed them psychologically. At that point, I realized the phrase itself was the problem. Passive income suggests that the ideal life is one where you are not needed, where your value is fully detached from your presence, where your best contribution is absence. That is a dangerous belief. What actually creates a good life is not passivity, but optionality. The ability to choose where effort goes, not the elimination of effort entirely. When effort is voluntary and aligned, it stops feeling like work and starts feeling like expression. The mistake I made was thinking the goal was to stop playing the game. The real goal was to play a better one. Passive income often attracts people who are exhausted, not lazy. People who are burned out, not unmotivated. They are looking for relief, and the promise of money without effort feels like a cure. But what they often need is better boundaries, better leverage, or better alignment between their values and their work. Passive income skips that work and offers an endpoint instead. Another uncomfortable truth emerged when I examined incentives. The most profitable passive income strategy in the world is selling the idea of passive income. Courses, newsletters, frameworks, and blueprints all promise freedom while requiring your constant attention to consume them. The people selling passivity are usually very active. That does not make them dishonest, but it should make you cautious. If passive income were as clean and scalable as advertised, the loudest voices would not need to explain it constantly. I also noticed how passive income changes behavior around risk. People pursuing it often underestimate hidden volatility. Rental income feels stable until vacancies happen. Dividends feel safe until companies cut them. Automated businesses feel resilient until markets shift. When you are not actively engaged, you notice problems later. Passivity reduces sensitivity. By the time you react, options are fewer. Active involvement, even at a strategic level, is not a weakness. It is awareness. Over time, I reframed everything. Instead of asking whether income was passive, I started asking whether it was anti-fragile, whether it improved with engagement, whether my presence made it better instead of unnecessary. The most satisfying income streams were not the quietest ones. They were the ones that rewarded judgment, creativity, and timing. They demanded attention, but they gave clarity in return. I stopped optimizing for doing nothing and started optimizing for doing the right things less often. That shift changed how money felt. It was no longer a substitute for meaning. It became a tool that supported a life I was actively participating in. The biggest lesson was realizing that passive income is not a destination. It is a phase, a layer, or a component. Treated as a foundation, it creates fragility. Treated as a supplement, it creates resilience. The moment passive income becomes the identity, stagnation follows. What people actually want is not passive income, but earned calm. Confidence that bills are covered, space to think, freedom to say no. Those outcomes come from systems, yes, but also from skills, judgment, and involvement. You do not get them by disappearing. If I could go back, I would stop asking how to remove myself from the equation and start asking how to make my involvement matter more. I would stop chasing silence and start chasing clarity. Passive income was misleading because it promised a feeling that only alignment can deliver. Money without effort is not the enemy, but effort without meaning is, and removing effort entirely rarely solves that problem. The real upgrade is not passive income. It is intentional income. Income that reflects who you are, what you are good at, and what you choose to care about. Once I understood that, the disappointment disappeared. Not because passive income suddenly worked better, but because it stopped being the point.